talking about that, I mean, like Native Americans, just specifically, like the influence on rock and roll from Link Ray to just like Robertson, who just passed away like recently. A friend of mine was telling me, he turned on MTV back in the day and he'd see white rock band. What was it about rock that was the genre for you guys? I mean, being a minority, the odds were kind of stacked against you, right?
No, they were to a degree. The overculture's idea of what rock looked like and sounded like was very much did not look like me, by no stretch of the imagination. But the music did. The music sounded like me, and I, like you, listened to Van Halen. I also listened to Paul and Funkadelic. I also listened to the Isley Brothers, who made amazing rock records.
Yeah.
To me, I listened to, and every time I'd see a black face in a white band, I was like, "Who's that?" Like you watch the Doobie Brothers and say, "Who's that dude back there playing bass?" And who's that? And who's that? That we were always there, and people of color have always been there. Hale was an amazing band. Fanny. That's amazing bands of people of color and women and all kinds of stuff. That was always there. It was always it might not have been featured in most cases, but it was always there.
Right.
And I think I speak for all of us when I say that we didn't think that those were limitations. We didn't see them as limitations. We didn't see these things as a problem to overcome. What we thought was most important is if you heard it, you'd understand it. Right?
Right. Yeah. Because the music does the talking at the end of the day.
Absolutely. You could, Pretty Face will get you but so far, but a really good song, but a really good riff will open up every kind of door for you.
No, 1,000%. I mean, look at guys from Hendrix to Chuck Berry. I mean, some of the greatest guitar players have been, guys of color, and like even just like some of the greatest artists, from Motown all the way up through just the king of pop. Well, come on.
I mean, but even more than that, James Jamerson. The soundtrack to most people's childhood is James Jamerson playing bass. It's there. You may not have seen him. You may not have heard him. Randy Jackson.
Yeah.
As a player, when he played with Journey, when he played with everybody, he plays
that Moog synth that he played on Whitney Houston's "How Will I Know." I mean, jeez, come on.
Exactly. It's all there. It's all there. It's always there. It's never not there. If you talk to the people that were popular and you ask them what their influences were, chances are it's a person of color. Chances are it's a woman. Chances are, one of my biggest influences is Billie Holiday. I love Billie Holiday. I love the emotion she can get out of anything. And that's what I strive for, is to wring out as much emotion out of any song that I sing as Billie Holiday could do in a note.
Yeah.
Or you talked about Michael Jackson earlier. Michael Jackson, when he was younger, did the song, and I think it's the perfect song. I'll never not say this. "Who's Loving You" with the Jackson 5. This is a 10-year-old boy. Sounds like a 40-year-old man who's heartbroken and it's crying into his beer. You can't buy that kind of thing. You can't invent that kind of shit.
Yeah. Even his performance on, like "I'll Be There" and stuff like that. Like, just raw emotion.
Absolutely.
From a child, that nonetheless.
And coming out of a child. I say it was the child abuse that sort of caused all that. But that's another story.
Well,
you guys ever hear of Big Country?
Of course.
Okay, so Tony Butler, who's the bass player in that band, Black, big influence on me as a kid. And the impetus for starting Zigzag was from the song. He was on the Pretenders record, "Learning to Crawl," and my City Is Gone. That bass line is him. And I structured musically the groove kind of around that Pretender song and what Tony was playing.
I hear it now. Yes, I didn't hear it before. I hear it now.
Yeah, you can kind of hear it. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's very, that was, and another thing too, here I am in the late 80s as a teenager, and I'm watching MTV, and I'm a Fishbone fan. I had to get on 2 a.m. to ever see one of their videos played, or 24/7 Spies. Like I never was able to see them on the primetime hours. But when Living Color came out and when Colt came out, it was like bombastic and got a lot of rotation. And I was so happy because, here was this all black band out of New York City, and that was just kicking major ass. And it had this Zeppelin backbone with this amazing vocals and this shred guitar player. And, I couldn't get enough. And I was so, in my heart, I was just so happy to see this. And was hoping.
We were hoping that the door would then swing open for other bands, actually. And we were hoping that, bands like Spies or Fishbone or PBR Street Gang or a bunch of other bands around the world would get the same kind of energy. There's a band out of Canada called the Joneses. I love them. And we'd hope that they would all get a shine from that. Like it wasn't for us, it was for everybody else that came after us. And it took a while, but it happened.
Do you think Nirvana and hip hop kind of ruined the kind of, I guess, like the I was gonna say, like not like the projection, but like sort of like the launch for a lot of rock bands in the early 90s? Because everybody was so anti wanting to be rock star, and then the hip hop guys came in and said, okay, well, you don't want to be rock stars, fuck you, we'll be the rock stars. And then rock sort of never recovered from that.
Yeah, the evolution of music in general didn't ruin anything. It just changed it. It transmogrified. And, the idea of that hip hop is a continuum of other things, which it really is. That it didn't. I don't think it ruined it. I think that there was a lot of gatekeeping going on, and these folks that were in the hip hop scene didn't give a fuck about the gate. Fuck a gate. We'll climb over it. We'll dig under it. We'll knock the gate down. And that's what they did. And that, if that's not rock and roll, I don't know what is.
Right. No, I completely agree. And just the way that you said that, I mean, when people talk about hip hop artists being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like people don't understand like how rock and roll hip hop really is.
Oh, absolutely. The early hip hop, the samples they were using was Big Beat, and they were using Zeppelin samples. They were using all kinds of stuff. They may not have had a guitar. They may not have had the drums, but they had a drum machine and they had a sampler, and they could approximate and make that same kind of sound. It's not any different. It's just like I said, it's just a continuation of what's coming next. And who knows what's going to happen after hip hop? Who knows what's going to happen after we've got so many permutations of it. We got the mumble rap and all this other stuff that's coming out of hip hop right now. And some of it is going back to the basics, back to the roots of rock and roll in the so-called hip hop idiom. But to me, it's all the same. It's all the same.
Bear Claw and the Balance Brigade, brand new EP 4 on the Floor is coming on December 8th. You can pre-order it now and get it available wherever you get your music. BearClawAcademyMusic.com for all the deets. Corey, of course, you're a big fan of David Bowie. You did the Celebrating David Bowie. What was it about him that you just fell in love with?
He embraced it all. People like Luther Vandross got their start. And, there's a story that David Bowie is on Soul Train, of all places. Mm-hmm. And Don Cornelius is asking him questions. And in the middle of the interview, he says, I just want you to know, that guy over there who's singing background, that's Luther Vandross. He's going to be a major superstar. Mm-hmm. Bowie did that for him. Mm-hmm. The kind of people that played on his records.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, what happened to him? He blew up.
Stevie Ray, and his bands were all these monster players. Carlos Alomar, all these players that came out of that.
Tony Thompson, Omar Hakim.
Tony Thompson's, Omar, Sterling, all those folks that he had an eye for talent. plain and simple, and understood within the context of all this stuff that he's only as good as the people around him, and the best players he could find were everywhere, all around the world, and he found them and brought them on, and only made his music better. But in the early days, he found the best people in his neighborhood.
Right.
When he got bigger, he found more people outside of his neighborhood and the music got more interesting. And he moved to Berlin just to embrace himself into that scene, the music scene that was happening in Berlin. He would move to these places to absorb what was happening and as a conduit created out of that.
Mm-hmm. And talk about somebody that doesn't give a fuck. I mean, look at how many times he reinvented himself. I mean, constantly changing it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just love that. He
he was a chameleon.
Yeah,
he was. He really was. And you'd be hard pressed to find any genre of music at the time when he was doing it that he didn't make himself a part of. I mean, his Earthling was a drum and bass record.
Yeah.
He got into that whole thing and made amazing music out of that. He had a musical theater phase. He had all kinds of phases because he became a part of whatever that musical scene was.
Right.
He had an album called Outside that came out in around 95 that explored improvisation and these long artsy tunes that would go beyond 8 minutes. The album didn't really do well, but to me, oh my gosh, it was.
That's him playing saxophone. That's him playing saxophone on that whole record.
Right.
And he's blowing in some cases. In some cases, he's like, "Oh, stop!" But there's some parts of that record where he's like, "Wow, you got to some Ornette shit right there." Wow.
Yeah. Totally. So true. I saw him on that tour, and Nine Inch Nails opened up, and he and Trent plays sax as well. They both were doing duets. They were trading licks off each other. It's amazing.
That's insane.
Don't see that often.
No, you don't see that at all. I almost feel like music has just gotten too competitive. It's like, even people are afraid to like cross promote, like you're like cross promo people on social media and stuff. It's like, no, I can't do that. Especially, I'll give you an example in radio. Oh my God forbid I get like a photo taken of me and like somebody from across the street at a bar together or something. Program director, they're like, why were you with so and so from Show 97.7 you can't be in photos with your competition. And I'm like, it's so like closed, small minded.
Catty.
You're doing a service for people. You're not. What you're doing is bringing emotion to people. Just the masses. Who cares if your so-called competition is doing the same thing? You're all both doing the same job.
Yeah, you're trying to put smiles on faces.
Basically.
Yeah. I know there's going to be a lot of smiles on faces when you go over to do some shows with Extreme. Talk about a freaking amazing band.
Yeah, we're having a blast with them. Actually, we're having the best time right now playing with Extreme. Nuno is really, really nice. All of them, Pat, Kev, all of them are really, really good people, really down to earth people and relatable, just as human being to human being. So when us going on stage, it's not about, we're going to cut some heads and make sure that we leave a hole in the stage so that they can't crawl out of. It's like, no, we're going to do what we are enhancing what's coming next. And it's been so much fun. So much.
And we talked about this after the Boston show, Corey, that it's almost as though Living Colour's having the third wave.
I would hope
expose all these bigger venues and bigger audiences again.
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope people are amenable to listening to all the other stuff that they might have missed, and not just that one song. On in the show, sometimes we would open with rock and roll, Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll. And just to give you an idea of the length and breadth of what you're about to experience, that it will go from really rootsy kind of things to something really out there and experimental, which is in both bands, which I love.
Yeah. It's funny you said that, you know, fans in like that one song. I mean, Cult of Personality, is that like a blessing in disguise, or is sort of like annoying at this point?
I can't complain. It's keeping keeping the lights on right now. You know?
Right.
Yeah. So what am I going to complain about? It's something that I benefited from the labor of my work, from my labor. I've benefited from it. I can't denigrate it. You know, yeah, you want to hear that song, you're gonna hear that song. It's not like you're never gonna hear that song. Mm-hmm. Hell, you can turn on television right now and watch a commercial with it on. You could, play a video game and it's there. You can, go to YouTube. There's people trying to figure out how it works.
I mean, it's CM Punk's entrance theme.
Absolutely. Right. Right. It's not completely ubiquitous, but it is ever present. And what do I have to complain about? Mm-hmm. This is something I did 30 years ago.
Yeah. It's almost like you made a statement in pop culture. I mean, like everybody knows that song. I mean, artists work their whole careers to have something like that. You can't complain about it.
Why should I? Doesn't make any sense.
It's like going to see Def Leppard and they don't play Pour Some Sugar on Me. I mean, you're gonna leave upset.
Yeah. I saw something and there's an artist that wouldn't play one of their bigger songs because it has references to guns to it, but it's her biggest song, and she wouldn't do it. And it's like, I don't know if that's a good idea, but do you?
I guess in the political climate, like people are afraid of getting canceled from anything, so I'm not even surprised by that story.
Yeah.
So look, Bear Claw and the Balance Brigade, new EP, 4 on the Floor. This is really exciting. December 18th. I know Joe is super excited about having you on board with the project. I mean,
an all new episode of The Jeremy White Show,
available wherever you stream.